Hey there, Real Estate Junkies. Before we dive into today's episode, we've got some game changing resources to help you start buying and selling real estate on terms, the smart, creative way. Want to learn how to invest with little or no money down? Grab your free ebook, The 4 Game Plans, and discover the exact strategies we use every day. Get it now. The link is in the show notes. Looking for a complete step by step system to start making 3 paydays per deal? Check out the Quantum Leap System, our home study course packed with everything you need to close your first terms deal. Need a personalized strategy? Book a free one-on-one strategy session with one of our coaches. Just use coupon FREE3 at checkout. Ready to take action? Join the 3 Payday Apprentice Program and start working toward real estate success with direct mentorship. Want hands-on training with us? Spend 3 days at our In the Trenches Bootcamp, where we'll work side by side to lock in deals. And don't miss our biggest event of the year, QOS Live 2025. Connect with top investors, sharpen your skills, and take your business to the next level. Secure your spot today. All links are right below in the show notes. Click now and start building your real estate empire. Now, let's get into today's episode. That's a huge accomplishment, especially if someone, I think both of us would agree, like when we got into real estate, you got into wholesaling. I was a PE teacher and a basketball coach. And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to call people and try and buy their home. So you can imagine how nervous, number one, and I was just throwing up all over myself. So if I had a recording from day one to now, it's just, I'm a completely different person, right? I'm more confident, and this business has changed me personally. It has changed my personality. Welcome back, everyone, to Real Estate Junkies Coast to Coast. I'm your co-host, Rusty Ham on the West Coast. Rick on the East Coast.
Yep.
Say hi, Rick.
Hey, everyone.
How's the weather out there, Rick? It is 90 degrees in SoCal right now. It's beautiful.
I think it was in the feast today, but it's supposed to be spring.
Yeah. My wife is going to be out there this next week. She's she's taking the 8th graders to DC. So she's going to be roaming around in the Northeast. But she said it's supposed to be really nice. It's supposed to be like in the mid-70s next week.
I haven't seen that, but
maybe that's wishful thinking on her part. All right, let's get started here. We have our warm-up, which is mindset, skill set, and systems. I guess it's a mindset. It's also systems related, right? Where we're nearing the end of trimester 1, right, Rick? With Wicked Smart, we do trimesters. A lot of people do quarters. We do trimesters. So normally what we do at the end of trimesters, Rick, is we look back at January 1. Because at January 1, we're setting goals, right? We're setting how many deals we want to get, how many souls we want to get, what does that look like money-wise, how many dials do we need to make in order to get these deals, right? Not only deals, too, we're looking at our health. We're looking at relationships. Goals doesn't necessarily have to be just the business, right? It's because if you're looking at good habits and stuff like that, so we're looking at those things as well. So we always revisit those things.
Right, and we start putting together the business plan prior to 1 January. We're actually doing it in like the October timeframe for the following year.
Yeah, yep. And so we want our associates to think about and visualize themselves. Where are they at 12/31/25? What does that look like? Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself on the beach drinking Mai Tais? What does the air smell like? We want them to physically put themselves there. And what does the bank account look like? Right? And then we work backwards from there, right? So we say, okay, if that's what you're going to get, then we work backwards and we say, okay, you need to do this, X, Y, and Z in order to get to that point. Describe what we're doing this week with associates as far as looking at their goals and looking at their activities, right? There's a couple things that we look at.
In each week on the coaching calls, we talk about KPIs or key performance indicators. So those are your metrics. How many dials, how many people did you talk to? Out of that, how many leads? how many leads converted into appointments, how many appointments became offers, and how many offers became contracts, takens. Of course, how many takens to be sold. So what we're doing is each trimester, we're looking back at what we had said we want to commit to. So let's just say hypothetically 12 deals a year, just hypothetically. So obviously that's one deal a month. So we've already mapped out, everybody would have mapped out how many of our KPIs we need, what our metrics need to look like. So when you get to the end of the trimester, you look back and say, okay, did I get 4 deals over the last 4 months? No. Why not? And be honest with yourself. Obviously, you didn't meet the objectives for your metrics. You didn't achieve what you don't want to beat yourself up, but be realistic and say, okay, what do I need to change to accomplish that? And you need to do what, Rusty, from that?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that we look at, right? We look at, okay, what were the goals? Let's say hypothetically you had 4 deals that you wanted to do within the first trimester and you didn't, right? So we want to say, okay, what's your activities? Is your activities matching your goals, or do we need to revisit our goals and maybe lower our goals to match our activities? And you said something really important there, not to beat yourself up if you don't reach your goal. There's a book behind me called The Gap and the Gain, and people that get frustrated look at the gap, meaning they look at what they didn't achieve. They have four deals in their mind. They didn't get it and they beat themselves up. A lot of times they'll get frustrated. They'll stop dialing because there's no proof of concept. They don't think it's going to work, rather than looking at the gain, which is, okay, what did you learn in those 4 months? And then how can the things that you learn, how can you propel yourself in the next trimester, right? So we definitely look at their activity, right? Because again, you talk about being realistic. In order to get a deal a month, I think we say it's around 4 to 5 appointments a month, 4 to 5 offers, and about 25% will say yes. So meaning about one person out of those 4 or 5 offers will say yes. So in order to go on 4 or 5 appointments, you need to be on the phone almost daily, right? And we're not saying 7 days a week, but at least 5 days a week, you're putting in the time, which is probably around, I want to say 300 dials, 350 dials a week in order to get those appointments. So we look at it and say, okay, are you doing the 300 dials a week in order to get an appointment a week, in order to get 4 or 5 offers a month, in order to get that deal? If you're not, what are we doing? So you got to be honest. Are you, instead of dialing, are you going to the store to pick up groceries? You have a dial session, but you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and that errand lasts an hour or 2. And then you come back and you're like, oh, it's too late to dial. So are we having competing commitments, meaning something else, it's a shiny object, right? It's that something else that's easier that you can accomplish rather than sitting down and doing what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Yep, and I would suggest revisiting your why, because if you're letting obstacles get in your way, obviously your why is not dialed in enough. And on the other side of it, I look back at 2023. I had these goals of how many deals I wanted to do and all of my goals laid out for the year, looking back at December from the perspective of December 31st, 2023. And one of my major goals was to leave my W-2. I didn't get the number of deals that I had planned, that I had set goals for, but I did achieve a lot of my goals. Now, had I just had limited thinking, I might not have achieved any of that. So think big enough. And then when you look back, you may not accomplish everything, but you will accomplish more than you would have ordinarily.
And we tell the associates to listen to one of your first phone calls to a phone call that you do now, right? That's a huge accomplishment, especially if someone, I think both of us would agree that when we got into real estate, you got into wholesaling, I was a PE teacher and a basketball coach. And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to call people and try and buy their home. So you can imagine how nervous, number one, and I was just throwing up all over myself. So if I had a recording of from day one to now, it's just, I'm a completely different person, right? I'm more confident, and this business has changed me personally. Has changed my personality. Before I was very passive, afraid of conflict. I wasn't aggressive when I talked to people. I would usually shy away if there was any kind of sort of conflict. Now I'm okay with it because I've talked to so many people and have had so many conflicts with sellers disagreeing with what I'm saying, or I'm trying to have to explain myself. I'm more confident now. Now I can have a conversation with people and not be afraid to maybe dig deeper if there is a conflict there. So that's the gain, right? The gap in the gain. That's the gain. I have gained so much, even though I may not have as many deals in my pocket that I wish, but I'm a different person now because of all the things that I've learned.
Yeah, I remember going back a few years ago to a strategy session, which was the kind of the prelude to boot camps now. But you had to be high six to go to one strategy session. And I know you went to one, Rusty, and I went to one. And listening to the coaches making calls live, which is what we still do. And I thought, wow, they didn't accept no for an answer. How did they do that? And they totally turned the conversation around. I thought, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. I can do that now. And would I have thought that I would be able to? Not where I was back then.
Yeah, I remember like when they used to say no, I'd be like, okay, talk to you later. Hey, I would end the call real quick. Now they say no, and I ask them, why do you say no? What is it about it you don't like? We dig a little deeper. But we went off the side a little bit on what we were truly talking about, which is if you're not reaching your goals, then you got to reevaluate yourself and evaluate your activity, right? Maybe a deal a month is not realistic for you. So now you're like, okay, maybe I can cut that in half so I can do a deal every other month because that's what my activity is producing, right? So hypothetically, just because you didn't get a deal in the first 4 months doesn't mean you might not. If you continue with your activity, you might get two that pop in the next month, right? And then you get another one the next month. And then it averages out that you get your 6 throughout the year, right? So don't be stuck on a number for the full year, right? If it's not happening, take a step back, look at your numbers and reevaluate and change it. It's okay. You're not going to die. You're not going to, you just change your goals to match your activities, or hire a VA and step it up and say, you know, I'm going to hire somebody now to make these dials, and I'm going to really focus on the follow-ups and trying to get on appointments, and then you can step up that way, right? Good stuff, Rick. Let's transition to our game plan. Talk about a deal that I spoke to a seller today with an associate. If you guys don't know, associates go on appointments. And in fact, my first deal was I went on an appointment and my coach called in while I was there. And the coach spoke to the sellers as I had the phone right there on the kitchen table, and they were asking Mike on the phone questions, and Mike was answering them. And I was just sitting there listening and learning, right? So I did that today with Jeremiah. He was just there at the house, and I called in, and the guy asked me questions. He's a military guy. He understands the 2 out of 3 rule. You have to live in the house 2 out of the 5 years. If it's empty more than 3 years, or if you're not occupied for more than 3 years, there's some tax implications. Again, we're not CPAs, but there could be some tax implications if it's not occupied for more than 3 years. So he understood that rule. He wants to retire. He's in the military. He wants to retire in 3 years, and he's okay with waiting for money. He was just going to rent until he retires. Once he retires, then he wants that house cashed out. So this guy is going to use, when he retires, he's going to use his entitlement to purchase a home, and he calls it his dream home, and then that's the house that he wants to live in the rest of his days. So we went over a couple of things. We went over a lease purchase, which is perfect. Normal lease purchases, right, Rick, are within that 36-month period for that reason, for tax purposes.
Or if it's owner occupied.
If it's owner occupied.
If it's
Right.
not, you go for a longer term.
So if it's owner occupied, we typically, just because we want to protect the seller, normally we want longer terms so we make more money that way, but we also want to put the seller in a good situation. So with a lease purchase, we normally do 36 months. We're like, okay, cool. And then he said he was going to rent it. So we're like, okay, if you're going to rent, then we can do this. And then we pivoted to an AO, told him that we were going to get a down payment. You can get the cash flow, blah, blah, blah. You're going to make more this way. We're going to make less, but you're going to be in control. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to be in control. I just want to be done with the home. I want you guys to take over, but I want some money down. What do you think we did?
Pivoted to a sub 2.
Yeah. So
sub 2 or owner finance.
Yeah, it's a hybrid, right? The sub 2 owner finance, because he had about $140,000 in equity. So what we would do then, and I told him, I said, because we're going to give you money up front, we need to protect ourselves by transferring the title. The mortgage would stay in your name. And then he's, okay, yeah, I have no problems with that. Our problem, which we talked about off the air, is now that we're giving money up front and now it's a sub 2, title is transferred, which means it has stopped the clock. That 3 out of the 5 years is not an issue anymore. We can go as long as we want, technically.
Obviously, you don't want to be limited to 3 years if you have ownership of the property.
Yeah, so that's what I meant. Because title transferred, we can extend it as long as we want. I know he wants to get cashed out, which we could theoretically in 3 years cash him out with other deals, other money that comes in. We can say, hey, okay, here's our 140, and now we own that house forever, right? The issue now becomes, okay, we already discussed 36 months. We already discussed a down payment. And that's why I don't want to be in the middle, but I do want a portion of that down payment. So we're like, okay. But the reason why I'm okay with it, it's a first deal for Jeremiah. There's a huge principal paydown at $800 a month, which is I think 10 grand a year coming off the principal of that mortgage. There's going to be almost $1,000 in spread, payday 2. And then we're going to drop the price a bit because we're giving him money up front. We're going to drop the price a bit, and then we're going to have a really big premium on that. In my head, Rick, and you can counter me if you want. You don't have to agree with me. I know 36 months you went, ew. But I think there's room there for, even if it goes 2 years, he's still going to make, even if it's sub 2.
Yep. And just for everyone's knowledge, I always, even if it's a longer term deal, I also run the numbers in 24 months because there's a good chance it'll cash out within 24 months.
Right.
So
it's priced, it's around $500,000 as far as the home price, which that's been our sweet spot, right? $400,000 to $600,000 is our sweet spot as far as the quality of tenant buyers that we get and them cashing out. Anything above that, you're in the $1 million range. A lot of times it's harder to find buyers with that price point. And then anything lower than that, the quality of buyers may not be there. So I think the sweet spot for us is that $400,000 to $600,000. $400,000 home, 500. They have money. They make some money. They're probably pretty good with their money.
I know, Rusty, you had mentioned the 3 years, and I kind of cringed when you said that. Typically, I will not go with 3 years. The reason being is that if the original tenant buyer defaults, you only have a year to get the other one to get another tenant buyer to get their mortgage. Ultimately, you'd want a minimum of 48 months. So what I do, and I had this on one of my deals, she didn't want to go 48 months. She wanted 36. And I said, okay, how about 36 and 2 6-month extensions if needed? And chances are it wouldn't be needed. So that's written up that way. So automatic extensions go into effect if that worst case were to happen.
Right. Yeah. And then if you don't have the extension, let's say the tenant buyer doesn't perform, which is rare, You do have a year, theoretically, because we own the property, we could sell it outright. We can get a realtor and sell it traditionally. You wouldn't make as much because of all the realtor fees and closing costs and stuff. Theoretically, you could do that because, like I said, there's $20K that came off the principal, so you gained that. You've gotten the cash flow. You probably have gotten the down payment from the tenant buyer because it's non-refundable. So if they don't perform, you get to keep it. And then you sell traditionally, and then you're like, for me, like my sub 2 right now, my tenant buyers didn't perform. Once they get out, I'm going to sell it traditionally, and the markup that I'm going to sell it at.
And that's a win either way you look at it.
Yeah, and that's why you want to own, right?
Yeah.
That's why you want to own property. That's what we're talking about. It's super important. That's what we've talked about in the past, where in the beginning we did lease purchases. It's safer for us because you're a beginning investor. But now that we're more savvy, we want to own these properties. We want to have properties in our portfolio where we're guaranteed a certain cash flow a month. We're guaranteed payday threes at a later date. And if we need to pivot, we can pivot. We don't necessarily have to be done within that 36-month period.
And I think that kind of brings me back to the advantage of the community and this whole business model. There are so many ways to pivot. And I know that was one of the challenges. My thinking way back was, what if this? What if that? Doesn't matter. There's a way to pivot.
Yeah, 100%. And again, leaning on the community, we talked about, and you talked about it off the air, there's an associate that sometimes you don't get a deal right away. It took you 15 months, it took me a year. This guy's is taking him, 18? And I don't say that to discourage anybody who wants to be in our community. We've had people that have done deals very quickly, right? It's a wide range. We've had people do deals right away, and we've had deals that have taken a while. So my point is, lean on the community, lean on your coaches as much as possible. Because if you do that, then the odds of you getting deals are higher. And again, these deals, we don't take out mortgages. We don't put money down. This is not money that's coming out of our pocket. It's infinite money, right? We're getting these houses under contract with no money, and then we're getting money on the back end with these buyers. So it is a longer process than normal, right? If we were to get loans and get private money and you have all these mortgages, you can do that. That is a strategy, right? Buy and hold and have all these mortgages, but then you risk the 08, 09 crash where you're stuck with these mortgages and the value of the house is way less than what you're owed, right? And then now you have to file bankruptcy and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of the reason why we're doing this is Chris went through that and he's like, I'm not doing any more loans. I'm just going to do it on term. So it's a longer process to get a house under contract under terms. But when you do, it's very lucrative. Would you agree?
Well, absolutely. If you look at the return, I haven't seen anywhere where you can beat the return on this.
Yeah, the return.
Yeah. If it takes you 18 months to get a deal, and then all of a sudden you pop one and it's a 6-figure deal, which whether it's in California or New England or whatever, odds are pretty good that it will be a 6-figure deal. If the variables are there, isn't that worth the 18 months?
Right.
Because once one pops, more will come after that.
Yeah, I remember it took me a year to get my first deal, and my confidence just grew exponentially just because now I'm working on the buyer side and I'm working with buyers and then I'm talking to sellers, and now I can say I'm confident because, hey, I just helped this seller out because this and that. So my confidence grew exponentially because a simple house that I got under contract. All right, let's pivot to our cool down. We have a couple things coming up next month in April. I believe it was April 12, 13, and 14. The In the Trenches boot camp. It's going to be you said it before we jumped on. That's why I was laughing. The Real Estate Junkies are going to be together. We're going to be hanging out together in Rhode Island, helping associates out. There are a few spots open, so go into the show notes, click on the ITTB link, and sign up today because we will both be out there and we're going to make phone calls for you and show you a game plan on how to get rid of your W-2, right?
Yep. It's going to be a good time.
Yep. And then you want to schedule QOS Live 2025. That's going to be in October, the beginning of October. Normally it's the end of September, right?
Yep. It's October 6th and
Yeah. So October in the city of Boston.
Boston.
Yep. So it's a Monday, Tuesday. Normally it's a 3 or 4 day event, but we're only going back to 2, which we cram a bunch of stuff in there, but there's a lot of lessons learned right when you're live and you're with other like-minded people that want to do deals. What thing that you have taken away from QOS Live? You've done a few. When you started out, it was virtual.
Yep. I've been to quite a few live events now. Haven't missed one. I would never miss one just because of all the takeaways. And there's just so many takeaways. But if you don't go, it could be that one thing that you missed out on that could totally change your business.
Not only your business, your life. Yeah. And so we have great guest speakers. You're actually even working with one of the guest speakers. So we had our last QOS, right? Forbes Riley. So you're working with her and you were able to connect with her. And I'm sure you're learning a lot from her. In the past, for me, I was able to hook up with Mark Willis with Bank on Yourself. If you guys don't know anything about Bank on Yourself, it's revolving around whole life insurance and using policy loans to pay off debt and all that kind of stuff. That's been huge as far as my life because I was able to get policies on my kids, and then it's generational, right? So you can, and then when they have kids, you can get policies on their kids, and it just starts a generational kind of wealth building, and it's passive, right? I don't want to say you're hiding money, but the government can't touch it. You get paid interest on your cash value, and then you're able to pull from it and do things with it. You can maybe, if you need to put money down on a sub 2 or on a financing, you can get a policy loan out and use that to buy a house. And then once you get your payday 1, you pay yourself back. So you're basically your own bank. So that's one of the biggest things I got from QOS was the Bank on Yourself strategy. But that's also in the show notes, QOS 2025. Again, Real Estate Junkies will both be there. So you can meet us in person. Make you guys say hi, and hopefully we can hang out at the local bar, right?
Oyster bar.
The oyster. Is there an oyster bar in Boston? I'm sure there is.
Well, not in Boston. No, I'm thinking the ITTB.
Oh, yeah. So April, hang out in Rhode Island. We'll take you to our favorite spots. Boston, I don't know any favorite spots. I'm not familiar with it.
And Rusty's buying.
Am I? Yeah, I can put it on my business credit card and make it a write-off. There we go. All right, Rick. Great stuff. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you this week.
Good as always, Rusty.
All right. Take care, everybody.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.